right, so hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cellar Dwellers podcast. Again, it's been a current theme. We've been on a hiatus. Hopefully, that'll change. But today, Andrew and I, who was just here, not sure what happened. We are going to be talking about the newest Batman film in the long franchise of the character, the Batman, starring Robert Pattinson. We both seem to enjoy it, but yeah, we're gonna really get into it. Our thoughts, opinions.
Is she?
Who's this?
Where is Rachel?
I don't know who Rachel is.
Where is Rachel?
Where's Andrew?
The Joker took her. Do me a favor. Do me a favor. Ask me what the difference is between us.
So, Batman. What's the difference between?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
That was a great wow. I was not expecting that great cameo from Batman. Very well timed. Andrew, you just missed Batman.
What do you mean? I just missed him.
He was just here. He just made a great joke about what's the difference between me and him. He said I'm not wearing hockey pads.
I'm upset that I missed it.
What the hell? He's like your favorite all-time character ever.
I know. Well, I'm sure he and I both had important things to do.
That just seems to be your luck, though, right?
I just always miss out on Batman appearances.
Yeah.
Because, he and I have never been in the same room at the same time.
True. Yeah, that is true.
Oh, okay, so what are we talking about?
What are your opening thoughts on the Batman? I just briefed our audience that we, of course, saw it because, any really new superhero film, that's kind of the theme of our podcast.
Oh, right, the movie. Yeah, okay.
Your opening thoughts?
I thought it was pretty good. I picked up on some initial references, inspirations. Yeah. I got the Long Halloween, of course, with the October 31st intro.
That I briefly read. I have not finished. It's somewhat of a long comic, but I remember
13 chapters.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I remember Andrew a while ago. I think shortly after the first trailer came out. So it just shows how well read I am. Not reading it since then, but he gave me that story. Long Halloween. It was like, you got to read it because this movie is very, very much so inspired by that story. So I kind of, like I said, started to read it, but I definitely kind of wanted to see the movie first and then read it because I'm sort of more of a visual learner. So I'm sure once after seeing this movie and then reading it, I'm sure I'll pick up on some of those references that I'm sure you just saw throughout the film. Yeah,
I mean, it's a lot less inspired than I thought it was going to be, but the foundation is there with the murder mystery and everything. That is the plot of Long Halloween, that someone's killing powerful people in Gotham.
Oh, because right off the get-go with this, the whole theme of this movie is like you get Detective Batman, right?
Yeah, which is fantastic because nobody's really done that before in a movie. I mean, there was the one scene in The Dark Knight where Bruce Wayne reconstructed a bullet. Oh boy. But the computer did the bullet part. So
yeah, I mean, it's just like literally from the start. I mean, of course you get, kind of just a fair warning. There'll probably be a lot of spoilers. So spoiler warning, spoilers ahead. Really from the start, you get the sense of Gotham. And what I loved about this movie, like the first thing I have here is just the dark tonality, the dark theme this movie was going for. I read and heard something that this movie was like 99% shot at night or in dark spaces, dark rooms, dark lit areas.
I believe that just based on my memory of seeing it.
So they were definitely going for that. And then of course you have, the bat light in the sky from Commissioner Gordon, and you have Robert Pattinson's voiceover saying, the light's not really a call sign, it's a warning for people, and you get all the villains that you show all the villains in Gotham at night and kind of like scared shit. Then they have those great shots of those dark alleyways, dark hallways.
That was awesome.
Something you and I always love seeing in film, just darkness. It's so suspenseful. It's such an easy, simplistic suspense builder in any film, but especially here. And you're like, it's just that's that urge of like, where the hell is he? Where could he be? He could be everywhere.
Yeah.
They're all on edge once that light goes up in the sky. But then it's like at some point after that, after the initial fight scene with those guys at the subway, like it sort of is like a quick shift from that crime fighting Batman to like detective Batman rest of the film.
Hmm.
And I love that because like you said, we really didn't, from all the Batman films I've seen, and I haven't seen every single one of them like I'm sure you have, but it's more so the crime fighting vigilante Batman that we've done
Yeah.
in the past. And
No,
it's
you're right. You're right.
so much the detective Batman, the detective work, that kind of always sort of took a back seat. So that was fantastic what they were trying to go for with this movie, and of course centering it around the villain, the Riddler,
Hmm.
who's leaving clue after clue behind, murdering these different people, all these people that are corrupt in Gotham. He's trying to expose them, trying to expose this, I guess, view of all these higher powers, higher people that be the mayor, the DA, all these people that are like, bulletproof, foolproof. Everyone has dirty laundry. I think they literally say that a couple times in the movie.
Probably.
So then of course towards the end you kind of find out, I guess, what his motives were behind that. But he's really just trying to expose people, and he knows Batman is going to be at every single scene because he's, not stupid.
Batman.
He's Batman, and he's trying to, solve this case, and it's just from what they were going for with that aspect, hit it out of the park for me. Like, absolutely loved that. Because again, it was something new, something different, something we were not used to seeing in, the past, most recent Batman films.
Yeah, I mean the last few were all. I mean the Christian Bale Batman movies were very punch now, ask questions later.
Yep, totally.
And Ben Affleck never really got his solo movie, so it's hard to say, what that film would have been like. But I really enjoyed how in this movie there was next to no Bruce Wayne. It was all Batman. And the scenes where he was Bruce Wayne, it was solely for the purpose of making Batman's life and investigation easier. Like when Bruce Wayne shows up to the funeral. I mean, that all of that is him looking for the Riddler still. So he's still being Batman. And the Riddler touches on that towards the end when you have the interrogation scene. And even though the Riddler doesn't know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, or that Batman is Bruce Wayne, I should say, he still touches on the fact in basic terms, like it doesn't matter who you are under the mask because you are Batman.
Yeah.
Whoever you are besides that doesn't matter because you will always be 100% Batman. You will be 100% committed to this crusade that you've set out on. Right. And even without knowing who Batman is under his mask, the Riddler in that scene perfectly characterizes Batman.
Oh yeah, no, it's great, and it's funny you mentioned that because that's something just in past episodes we even talked about with Batman. We haven't had really any episodes where we kind of dive deep into the character. Besides, I think once talking about one of your favorite, I think you referenced in your 10 through 6 films, The Dark Knight, you were talking about it. But I remember you saying something like, Batman isn't Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is Batman. That's always kind of been your core argument character. Bruce Wayne feels more at peace as himself when he's the Batman. That's
100%.
Bruce Wayne, the philanthropist, Bruce Wayne, the playboy, Bruce Wayne, the slush fund baby, or whatever you want to call. That's all a facade. That's him not being himself, right?
That's his costume. That's his mask, is being Bruce Wayne.
Projecting this image to the world, I think, to kind of strengthen his image and kind of show is sort of a selfless individual in terms of his, philanthropy, but also kind of casting this image like, stay off the track, stay off the scent. I'm clearly not Batman, because why the hell would Batman be this much in the limelight, in the spotlight, right?
Right.
Like I think that's kind of the motive behind that, trying to separate the two. And, that's, again, it's even more funny you said that, because the next thing I wanted to bring up is one of the the consistently big gripes I've seen with this movie that I do understand is that Bruce Wayne Batman in this film is so one-dimensional, right? In the sense that when he's Bruce Wayne for the short times on screen, he's really not even the Bruce Wayne we know. He's Batman, right? The whole Mayor funeral scene, when they keep showing that kid, because clearly when Batman saw that kid with his mother, he really saw himself at that age, losing a father. That kid was, alone. So he really clearly had some type of care and or connection about that young kid and wanted to protect him. And when that scene when the car freaking busts through the church and was trying to take out people to get the DA in there, he goes full on Batman and fucking sprints and saves the kid.
Right.
I don't know if the traditional Bruce Wayne, we've seen in the past would maybe do that, because I think anyone in there with bat and eye be like, holy shit, like this guy knows what he's doing. He's pretty well trained, right?
I think Bruce Wayne would have done that.
No, I know, but hear me out. I get and understand the gripes, because this Bruce Wayne is not a Bruce Wayne we're used to seeing, right? He kind of hated being Bruce Wayne, because when Alfred's talking to him, Alfred, who was played by Andy Serkis here, did a very good job, I think. Kind of not as much on screen as I was anticipating.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into that a little later, but he almost doesn't want to be Bruce Wayne. When he was talking about those accountants or investors or something they were going to, I mean, he like schlepped into his friggin' suit and kind of looked like a mess, like didn't really care about doing it. He was so centered and so focused on being Batman and solving this case and tracking down Riddler and solving this. That's all he cared about.
Right.
And I think that's what they were going for. So on that level, I can appreciate it, right? Because with any other film, when you're trying to replicate a character and, adapt a past film, where you can't have all the same traits and all the same narratives that you had in previous films, because it's just going to get very repetitive.
Yeah, then it gets boring.
So it's good to kind of try new things and try to develop a new character and focus really on the Batman. I mean, the movie, I don't know if people know, for all the people that hate, it's called The Batman. It's not called the Bruce Wayne.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
what movie did I see then?
Yeah, I don't know. So at first, when I saw those, gripes and complaints, I was like, yeah, I completely kind of understand, but that's just not what I think the writers and, producers, director, that's not what they were going for. They purposefully let Bruce Wayne take a back seat in this film.
Exactly. I agree. And I think that was the right move, because you go see the Batman, like I get it. Sometimes you want to see, it's kind of like Resident Evil, right? Like sometimes you want to see Chris Redfield mow through a horde of zombies, but sometimes you really want to see the politics of Umbrella and Tricell and all these different pharmaceutical companies trying to, maintain their hold on the power struggle of the world and bioorganic weapons.
Yep.
I think in the case of the Batman, almost every movie prior to this, like we've seen Bruce Wayne do his thing, become Batman, overcome struggles being Batman, mislead the public eye. Like we know that happens. It's the same thing with Spider-Man in Civil War and Homecoming with Uncle Ben. Like we know Uncle Ben is dead. Right. We don't need to see it again.
Which is also, it sparked something that you just said. Film fucking got me in the beginning with pretending that you're thinking you're about to see Thomas and Martha.
Oh yeah.
Those bastards got me good, and then you see the Riddler. You're like, okay, well this clearly can't be Thomas Wayne.
Right. But in the same sense, I think that it's.
You don't need that again. We've seen that so many times, so you don't need an origin story, because we already know. Everybody knows what happens to Martha and Thomas Wayne as they go down crime alley.
So just give me Batman.
It doesn't end well.
No. Just give me Batman.
Exactly.
And I'm totally okay with it.
But yeah, I mean, kind of switching gears a little bit, I guess, sort of talking about Robert Pattinson's performance. I mean, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, I could get on board with this. And then I think I saw the second trailer that I actually liked even more. And I'm like, holy shit, I can't wait for this movie.
don't even know if I saw the second trailer. I think I stopped after the first.
Just I just love the attention to detail with constructing him as the Batman, right? Like when he gets home, I think the first time or the second time or something, and he's got that bright black eye paint all over
That was one of my favorite little details.
to emphasize the classic Batman look with just the white eyes. I
Well,
mean,
even
not
even
even
more so than that,
yeah,
it's it's the simple fact of showing him taking off his mask,
yeah,
because a lot of superhero costumes are kind of like grafted to the actor's face, so it's hard to take on and off cleanly. So a lot of what they'll do, and you see this all the time in the Flash TV show, is he'll like put his hand up here and start to pull it off, and then it'll cut, and after it cuts, it's like on the desk and he already took it off, because it's awkward to see him do it. But to see Robert Pattinson just fully rip the mask off and have the black eyeliner around his eyes, it's a little detail that's so easily overlooked but so appreciated when it's done right.
oh my god, yeah, and I just he yeah, I was so even expecting kind of how I expected it to play out in his role. I mean, I was still kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of blown away with his performance. I mean, I think he just fit that character so well. A young Batman, young Bruce Wayne, kind of just starting out as Batman. I'm sure you caught the little snippet, Gotham City Journal's year two. So it's year two of him being Batman. Like he's
Mhm.
still pretty much a rookie in the game.
Which is ironic considering how much inspiration they pulled from year one,
Right.
the book.
Yeah. So, I loved how, his Batman voice too, something so simple. It wasn't like so deep and so like, well, oh, like I gotta be the Batman.
Yeah,
It was just like, lower tone, monotone, like
it was
simple.
just simple enough.
Yeah, and everything works so well, and I think he's still to me like an underrated actor. Like I still think he's not appreciated as much as he should be. I know you and I loved his performance in The Lighthouse. I mean,
Mhm.
I just really think he's coming into his own, and then of course in Tenet he kind of stole the show. Like
Yeah,
he was very good in
he
that too.
did.
So I think he's really coming into his own, and I they sort of ended this movie semi-ambiguously. Like I think they could definitely keep going with this universe, with this character, with these storylines that they sort of half ended on.
I think they could. Whether or not that was the intention is a different story, because I know the director Matt Reeves has said that there are a lot of things in the movie that, and we can talk about them a little bit later on because I'm sure you know what I'm mentioning, but there are certain things that he added into the movie that aren't necessarily Easter eggs for future movies, but just points of information to show, like, yeah, Batman has been around. He's done these things before. This is not his first night out.
Mhm.
So to show other characters that exist in the Batman mythology, that those characters also exist in this film, builds up more of a foundation for the character, which is really important considering this isn't a textbook origin story of him going through something like Batman Begins, for example, where, like, okay, you see him train with the League of Shadows or Assassins. I forget, they always change the name.
Yeah.
But then he comes back to Gotham and he finds Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul, and it's kind of him learning the ropes, and that becomes even more solidified in later films like The Dark Knight, when he's talking to Lucius Fox and he's like, oh, I can't turn my head, I gotta fix that because it didn't work last time, and all these things that get further explained of like the technology and the suit and the villains. Whereas this one is just like, yeah, you know what? The Joker exists. He wasn't in this movie, but he's out there. Which by that logic means that Harley Quinn exists or could exist at some point. Another inspiration that was incredibly apparent was a book called Batman Hush, which Hush is another villain. It's sort of an underrated, underutilized villain, but the story is almost the same as what we saw here. So one of the notes I have down is like, I would love to see Hush adapted, because I read that book in one sitting the first time I read it, and it's such an amazing character. And Tommy Elliott, who is Hush, his relationship with Bruce Wayne is fantastic, but this movie took so many elements from Hush and gave them to the Riddler that I find it hard to. I find that it would be hard to adapt Hush,
Right.
because Hush is built on this like childhood jealousy almost of, you know, Tommy and Bruce were friends, and then Bruce's parents died, and Bruce became the rich orphan that everyone knew about and talked about. So Tommy Elliott said, I'm going to kill my parents, then I'll become rich and I'll become famous. And then he killed his parents and it didn't work. And that builds into this, like, you know, he becomes a villain that wants to destroy Bruce Wayne and Batman. And there's a lot more moving parts than that in the book. That's like a very, very general overview. But I feel that they gave a lot of that to the Riddler, and it would be difficult to transition back to another story with the same premise.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that. That definitely sounds intriguing to me. Something I would want to read. But yeah, it's
If I can find my copy, you can have it, but I've got 7 long boxes to go through and I don't know where it is.
But yeah, I mean, I think maybe, maybe clearly because the Riddler's a more well-known villain, they sort of took other inspirations from other smaller storyline villains and sort of
Yep, certainly the case.
make them work. So either way, dude, I think they have a lot of potential here. To I don't necessarily want to say start another DC universe, but at least with this Batman, like I think people would love to see more of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially considering how well this movie was received critically.
Oh my god, yeah. And like every sequel's intention is to make money. And so this movie clearly I think is doing well in the box office. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
I mean, I think so. I haven't heard anything otherwise.
I think I could definitely see a sequel being developed, being made, and who knows, could it be, another adaptation of the Joker? Could they go some completely different route nobody's expecting? Whatever it is, I don't know, but yeah, critically acclaimed. I know you hate when I reference Rotten Tomatoes, but it's like still hanging in the 90s or upper 80s or somewhere around there. So I don't know. That's got to stand for something because
Everyone listens to Rotten Tomatoes, so I guess it's worth mentioning, but I hate them anyway.
But no, I like I said, I just think there's a lot of potential here, with this younger, adaptation of this Batman with Robert Pattinson obviously behind the helm. But I would love to see how they further this universe, or even can integrate other characters or other DC heroes as well into this. I mean, I don't know. It's, as you and I know, something we've talked about really ever since the I guess the Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder kind of falling out relationship. It sort of seems like the DC universe has sort of been at a standstill the last 3 to 4 years, which kind of is a shame considering the Snyder cut was insanely well received with critics and fans. And it's almost, you got to kind of imagine what might have been. And I know there's already talk about other DC films, and it almost seems like DC films coming out, or DC films that have come out since that, that downfall with the relationship, are all sort of their separate entities, right? Like it's not like you're
More or less. I mean, Peacemaker
the
obviously is still solidified itself in, let's call it the Snyderverse, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
What else is coming out? There's the Batman. Oh, there's Black Adam. But I'm a little shaky as to where Black Adam is going to fall.
Flash.
Oh yeah, the Flash. But the Flash rumors say that it's going to erase the Snyderverse.
Okay.
So I don't know. We'll see. But since we're talking about Robert Pattinson, we can just talk about the other actors a little bit. One of my other favorites was Colin Farrell as the Penguin, who was 100% unrecognizable.
Oh my god, yeah. Method acting at its finest, right?
Yeah, he did just such a fantastic job of like the disgusting, gross, selfish sleazebag.
And I couldn't believe, I was literally like the only one laughing out loud in the theater when he's tied up and he's walking like a penguin.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't even pick up on that until after the movie.
I was like I'm like, what the hell? I was like literally the lone dog in the theater pissing myself laughing.
It was funny. I mean, it's funny in hindsight, but at the moment, I didn't think of it.
Not.
I was
Yeah.
so wrapped up in the plot of like, oh my god, is he the rat? Really? Like, who is it? But no. You know what it was? I was so caught up in the fact that I didn't pick up on the incorrect Spanish, even though I don't speak Spanish. Like El Rata is like, no, it should be La Rata. Like I didn't even pick up on that, and I was sitting there going, damn, I can't believe I didn't get that. That I didn't even realize him waddling.
I think Balin was the only one that picked up on that. Even me, who proclaims to be semi-fluent in Spanish, I didn't even pick up on that either. So
Yeah, again, it was such a small detail, and I mean, this movie was riddled with the no pun intended, riddled with small details because of the Riddler. I mean, he's such a meticulous kind of villain when he's not being played by Jim Carrey.
speaking of something else, I wanted to bring up that I think you and Kyle sort of poo-pooed, but I think you kind of misinterpreted what I was saying was when Bruce Wayne's walking into the funeral and that guy in the crowd kind of catches his attention and he makes some reference to the mayor's death, like that bastard got what he deserved. I think you guys, when I brought it up to you, thought I thought he was directly referencing the Joker. But what I was saying was, I think that guy was referencing the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne because I don't remember the specific dialogue in that scene, but something like before was brought up like 5 minutes before. It was just weirdly timed about the Wayne's death and how Bruce was staring at him, and he was like the only one in that whole funeral scene that like caught his attention. Besides, of course, the kid at the end. But walking in, that was there's no way that was a coincidence. His wording, his choice, the camera's focus shot on him. So I'm just curious if that could have been a reference to his parents' death. If that literally, who knows, could have been the guy that killed his parents. Because as you know, there's so many different interpretations, different storylines on who killed Thomas and Martha Wayne. But I thought that was a little small detail that I at least picked up on, and I think was, like I said, just the word choice and the dialogue there was way too coincidental to just be just an add-on filler.
But then that would then imply that Joaquin Phoenix's Joker exists within the Robert Pattinson Batman universe.
I mean, yes and no. I don't think I don't think it directly has to do that because yes, it was in the Joker, but I gotta go back and watch it. But I remember like right before that scene, there was something about the death or how. Remember how they said the mayor's death was coincided with 20 years after Thomas and Martha Wayne's death that night? That whole thing was just very, very, very way too coincidental to not have any reference to their death with that guy.
To me, that was no. To me, I saw that as the Riddler just choosing his timing.
But how does that have anything to do with the Riddler? I'm just confused.
Because the Riddler was the one that started killing people 20 years to the week after the Waynes died.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know. Maybe, and I know he was searching for the Riddler, but it was just that word choice I can't get over. I just don't think that's just a coincidence. I don't buy it. I think it has some significance to the Wayne's death. And like, again, I'm not saying that it's correlates to.
But they were at the funeral talking about the death of the mayor. So when he says he gets what he deserved, he was talking about the mayor, not the Waynes.
Right, but I don't know. That look that he gave him in that focus camera shot was, I don't know. I just think
I think you need to watch it again because there are other characters that the camera focused on.
I think it was very unnecessary to just have that scene if he's just a pawn for the Riddler. That was.
Well, the point of the scene was that when Bruce Wayne went to the funeral, he said, I need to go because serial killers tend to follow the backlash of their crimes.
Right.
So he's assuming that the Riddler is going to be at that funeral.
And or other serial killers there.
Not necessarily, because...
Yes, necessarily.
No, because if some Joe Schmo killer down the street saw that the Riddler was killing people, that guy wouldn't go to the Riddler's victim's funeral.
Who knows, man? To maybe get an up close shot with Bruce Wayne to say, "Hey, buddy, yeah, wink, wink, I killed your parents." I don't know, dude. Who? It's just that
Honestly, I think you're overthinking this scene just a little bit.
So
I think so.
I
But
think,
anyway,
I think it's way too coincidental to not have any significance to the Wayne's death, especially the 20-year coinciding, death with the mayor and then, the Wayne's death. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it.
that's fine. That's fine. I think you're overthinking it, honestly.
I don't think either of us are right or wrong. I just think it's.
I know. I know. Listen, I've got a hot take on my notes sheet too. We can talk about in a minute. But other standouts I think are Jeffrey Wright, Zoe Kravitz. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman was just she was so practical in terms of like visuals and costumes but just the way that she operated and did things.
Yep.
There was nothing on her that you thought couldn't be on a regular cat burglar.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think the casting here throughout this movie was so well done. I don't really think anyone was like a miss, but yeah, she I think perfectly exemplified kind of, I guess, like an everyday sort of vigilante sort of type of Catwoman. I don't want to say the bottom of society, but she is sort of born out of, of course, like a similarity. Like her mother died. She has a connection to Falcone, I forget, I can't even pronounce. That's her father, so she knows him and works in that underground society to try to collect and capture dirt on people and sort of get back at the people that really wronged her, and obviously had her mother killed and had her all that.
Well, it's implied that Falcone killed her,
right?
Based on there was a line where Catwoman says like, "Yeah, my mother was strangled," and then you find out that Falcone likes to strangle people.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, okay."
And isn't that how it's also maybe implied how that reporter that was trying to expose Thomas Wayne, that he didn't necessarily want Falcone to kill him, but he wanted to put like the fear of God in.
Yeah, but Falcone decided to kill the reporter so that he could have some blackmail dirt on the Waynes.
Yes, right. So I'm saying he probably strangled that guy too.
Oh, probably. Yeah, probably. I want to talk about the details of the movie a little bit. Not like details, but like the bat suit, the Batmobile, the Bat Cave. I found it interesting that Wayne Manor wasn't really a thing. It was really just he lives in a tower in the middle of the city. So does that mean that the Bat Cave was underneath Wayne Tower?
Yeah, I guess from everything going on and how engaged the movie keeps you in terms of trying to figure out what like the Riddler's next move would be, right? Because that's what you, as the audience, you're trying to figure out, like,
right,
how is this guy going to be stopped. Little details like that kind of slip my mind, and you kind of just end up just buying it. You're like, oh yeah, the Batcave's here. He lives in the city. Like, so I mean, I don't know. They clearly got to be connected, I would think.
At the very least, yeah, because of the ease at which Alfred goes down there.
Right, and because if you notice that the couple of times he's gone back was, on his bike and driving through the subway tunnels and stuff to get back in there. So the subway tunnels are in the city, obviously. It's a subway.
Right.
So clearly it has to have some connection. I mean, in every single iteration of the Batman story,
yeah,
Bruce Wayne lives in Batman's attic, as
of course, yeah.
As he famously said.
Oh, that reminds me, really quick. I totally forgot about this until the other day. I was writing my review and going through some of the build credits. Yep. Zoe Kravitz also voices Catwoman in the Lego Batman movie.
Again, slipped my mind too.
I did not realize that until the other day.
That's funny. She had to have known about this film back then, right?
Oh, I don't know, man. Lego Batman movie was 2017, right?
Yeah, maybe early talks, but I highly doubt they had casting decisions back then. But.
Yeah, because Robert Pattinson wasn't cast until just a couple of years ago, I don't think. Yeah. But then again, I could be wrong. I don't know what happens at Warner Brothers. I think the Batsuit was really nice. It's like you can tell that he made it in the Batcave. It's it looks very practical, but it's It's like an armor-plated suit almost.
Yep.
I mean, it's strong enough to withhold a point-blank shotgun blast.
Yeah. And a bunch of assault rifle shots too, handgun.
Yeah, I mean that scene where he's breaking into Falcone's room, and the only light you see are from the muzzle blasts from the assault rifles. That was really cool. It's just like the scene in Welcome to Raccoon City that I know Kyle loved. It's so cool the way they shot that scene.
Oh, yeah.
But the suit was awesome. It was very nice.
Yeah, I thought it was it's funny, my girlfriend and I went back to watch The Dark Knight, a movie she quote unquote said was boring. So trying to watch that in the daylight in the morning when you're most awake to realize how great of a film that is. But it's funny, before he gets like his second suit in that, like his suit is like looked very like thick and sort of dated me and reminded me, it was like a very 90s, late 80s Michael Keaton-esque feel to it.
Yeah.
Kind of big, where I love Pattinson's suit because it was just so sleek and like almost made to fit, like, you know what
exactly,
I mean?
Yeah.
So it didn't look like thick or too big or like, looks like it was hanging off, and like it was just so nice, and it wasn't like black. It was like sort of a lightish black that I always love too, because as I always tell you, because you have a bunch of like posters and pictures and paintings and stuff of him in your room, of course, and your other room. But I love that, like, I guess video game / comic book look to Batman, like the dark gray and the black cape and the
yeah,
black.
like you always talk about my Jim Lee Batman poster.
Oh, it's my favorite.
It's like a lightish gray suit, black bat, black cowl and cape. It's really nice. I mean, Jim Lee's a great artist, so he knows what he's doing. But it's such an iconic look for the character.
It wasn't necessarily that, but it wasn't like just dark.
Yeah, it was similar.
It too. I thought it was excellent. And also too, what I absolutely loved. I mean, I think you heard me just freaking, I was just full of raw emotion and just giddy.
Yeah.
That fucking Batmobile started to rev up, and you thought he was down for the count. You're like, no, he's Batman. He's obviously not down for the count. And that whole just like 10-minute chase scene with
it was awesome.
Batman, like Batmobile, that was just perfect for this
big muscle car.
It was just badass. Had that fucking crazy booster on the back and
super unique design of the Batmobile.
Loved it.
But my favorite part of that scene in particular was when after everyone gets like knocked down and everything, Batman's disappeared. He's in the car and the Penguin is like in front of the car, like clear, ramming distance. Instead of just like hitting the Penguin with the car or turning on the headlights and capturing him or something, Batman like sits in the car and revs the engine, like telling the Penguin, "Get in your car, we're gonna go for a race. Like, do it, I dare you."
Yeah.
And it's just, that scene was so good. It was so high energy and fast paced.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was good enough that you knew what everything was that was happening and going on. And that shot of that, just the end of that scene where the explosion hits and Penguin's like, I got you. And then the car flips. And that one steady shot of, it was the upside down where Batman just walking towards the car. You're like, oh, damn, that's cool.
That's what Andrew and I call just pure cinema porn right there.
Yeah, it was so good. That scene, it was amazing. And I liked little details throughout the movie that like kind of implied the Batmobile wasn't quite done yet.
Yeah.
Because there were parts where you'd go in the Batcave and you'd see the engine just laid out in different pieces on a table somewhere. Like he and Alfred were still putting it together. So then to see it come to life in that scene and just chase down the Penguin, it was awesome. It was so cool. Yeah. And even though the Penguin was a side villain, let's say, it really gave him a level of credibility to see that.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, yeah. That definitely boosted Batman's cred for sure.
Yeah. And in the same vein, I liked towards the end when Batman and Catwoman get on their motorcycles and they ride off and then they split, because it felt like it was a good catharsis for the characters in terms of they're the kind of characters that always want to be together and with each other. They have the same end goal, Batman and Catwoman, but the means of getting there, they never quite line up. So they always have to split eventually.
Yep.
And that's something in the Long Halloween, again, that, you know, they want to work together, but they just can't, because there's something about it that does not allow them to work together. And it's really a great dichotomy that I think was done a little bit better here than it was in, say, like Christian Bale and Anne Hathaway.
Oh my God, yeah. I think because Christian Bale, right, was like an older actor sort of portraying a younger Batman, so you kind of always knew that in the back of your head, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Whereas Robert Pattinson like fits the mold way better. Like he's playing that accurate age that Bruce Wayne of Batman is in the film, as is Robert Pattinson. So you just kind of buy it more. And Zoe Kravitz, like the same thing. She's like looks way more the part, I guess, than I guess say an Anne Hathaway, who, you know, was still very good, but just their chemistry in this movie just worked really well. And
it really did.
That great dichotomy of the characters, sort of one of the same, right? Like it's really like kind of a mirrored, separate gender image of one another.
Exactly. Yeah.
What the character is, and sort of, you know, similar, I guess, born out of similar tragedies too, right? And kind of working with all they have at their, you know, their disposal. But yeah, that last bike scene was great, because it's like everyone knows like they're gonna go separate ways, but there's still that small party that's like, he's gonna go.
Maybe they won't. But then they always do.
And they split. And it was, you know, a great way to end such a very well done, very good film, a very enjoyable film. You know, and I just, like I said, I really don't have much, again, like besides that sort of, I guess, one-dimensional look and one-dimensional, I guess, purpose of what they were going for with Bruce Wayne Batman, I guess, dichotomy too.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, I understand some people may be wanting to see, I guess, a little bit more range with Bruce Wayne, and I guess a little bit more range with the Bruce Wayne-Alfred connection, because, right, like Alfred is when Bruce Wayne gets as personal as possible, because that's...
Yeah, in the hospital. That was very... I mean, to the point of people saying that the character seemed one-dimensional, just look at the hospital scene.
Oh, yeah, no, it's...
I mean, he
like, again, that's, I think, it's not so much one-dimensional, but that's just what they were going for. Again, the movie's titled
right. No, I understand totally. I get it. I think the people in the writers' room did a fantastic job with the script, and it's seen clearly in a part like the hospital when Alfred wakes up, where he immediately comes out swinging like, you lied to me my entire life, and then he basically like bears his soul to Alfred in this hospital room.
Yep.
But the part that's really important in those lines of dialogue is when he says, you know, like, I thought I mastered all of these emotions. I don't know what to do. Like, I thought I did it, and obviously something's not clicking anymore. And I mean, that's seen again at the end when he's helping people out of the arena, and he has this sort of like hopeful outlook on the future of Gotham, because, you know, he's seen that the people can follow his mission too and actually be good people. Right. And I think it's a real merit to the script and the writer's room.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Again, you always bring up these great points that I kind of, you know, things spark in my head and I kind of think of. But really, with what you just said, I think Balin sort of, not to be rude, maybe misunderstood it, but she made, I guess, you know, a good point. She's like, the whole movie, like Batman, like he doesn't really do much. Like he keeps kind of losing. He's like one step behind, and he doesn't solve anything really until the end. And then at the end, he's just kind of helping people. I go, well, that's the whole point, because Batman, he isn't Superman. He doesn't have an overwhelming power. He's one person with great gadgets and a martial arts background training. His whole point is to be a symbol for the greater good, to show people to not be afraid, to not back down to fear, right? Mm-hmm. To be a light and arc of hope for everyone, for all of Gotham. He's one person against all odds. Batman is a character of losing, of not being able to take care of everything yourself. His whole purpose is to show people, to bring out the greatest in them, to be the greatest they can be, to do the best they can do.
Right. To push themselves more, as he says so many times in the movie.
That's what I love about him.
I
Because
agree.
like again, he's not Superman, he's not Captain America, he's not fucking Hulk. He doesn't have raw power at his disposal. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He has to harp on his intelligence, his martial arts, his gadgets that really can all fail him too.
Hmm.
Again, he's a character at all odds. That's what I always go back to. And I think she did open up a little bit and kind of understood that more. And, you know, how he kind of transitioned and how he's still a young Batman. And he's like, maybe this vigilante knight savior, this isn't enough. I need to be a beacon for hope. I need to
Right.
show people they can do more themselves and not solely rely on one person. Right? It takes all of us. And that's, I think, just such a great lesson in all of life. Like, it really can take one person to make a huge difference in a society. And that's what Batman's all about. At least that's how I've always seen him. And like again, for that very reason, that's why I appreciate him. And that's why he's grown on me over the years, because I never really was exposed or really got into like Batman games or comics or stories or
Were you a Superman kid?
Not even necessarily. I mean, I love Superman. I still love him. Like, he's one of my favorite superheroes. I was really more so a Spider-Man kid.
I was a Batman kid.
Oh yeah, you were. You always understood him. But as I've gotten older, I've just learned, you know, grown to appreciate him more and more, because I think he's such a not even, I don't want to say misunderstood, but I guess sort of, yeah, like he is kind of a misunderstood hero to a lot of people.
Yeah, he's a lot more than what the Riddler wanted to destroy. You know, the rich, privileged kid.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure he was at one point before he, you know, went on this big mission to clean Gotham. But he's such a dynamic character when you really get into it, and it's not very apparent on the surface. You know, someone like Spider-Man, like you can instantly tell, like, this character is so complex and he has so many layers.
Yep.
just by looking at him and seeing, you know, yeah, teenage high school kid, lost his parents, lost his uncle, got bitten by a spider, has to hold up a job, do his homework, keep his girlfriend, but also save the city from crazed maniacs. You know, it's very complex and layered. But then you look at Batman on the surface and it's rich white guy plays with his toys because he has nothing better to do. But yeah. I mean, when you dive into it, it's a lot more than that. And Batman is much deeper than that.
Yeah. And it's almost like you always kind of learn some different angle or some different point that you didn't even know before. I mean, someone like you who's loved the character since you can remember and have read story after story, played video game after video game, watched TV show and movie after movie, like you've seen and read it all, and you still, I feel like, grow to appreciate him and find out things you didn't know or maybe you missed before.
Well, yeah, of course.
That's what I think makes Batman solely unique.
Yeah.
There's appreciate, you know, someone like that, like I said, that just doesn't have that raw ability or that brute strength or flight or whatever.
I know what you mean. He's
for people that obviously didn't know. There's a great scene when he's escaping the police station and he like puts on his like glider suit, flying, and I leaned over to Andrew. I go, "Who says Batman couldn't fly?"
Yeah, that was a good scene too. Just running from the police in general, I think, is a really important part of the Batman foundation. But just the final couple points I have in my notes here. The first one is I don't really have anything bad to say about the movie per se, but there are a few things that I would have liked to have seen. And I know that's tough with a 3-hour movie because you only have so much leeway, especially with Warner Brothers, when you're like, I want to make a 3-hour movie. They're like, no, you don't. I would have liked to see a little bit more Alfred, I think, because
I said
there
that.
was so much there when he says things like, I can teach you how to fight. Like, oh, he taught him how to fight. So talk about that. Let's hear it. And then they don't. And then they go into the hospital room and he starts talking about, the night that Thomas Wayne found out that Falcone murdered somebody. And they're like, oh, talk about that. And then they don't. But just the relationship between those two, especially when he says also things like, I was in the special forces, like, oh, good, talk about that. And then they don't. But
I think all that was more so intentional to kind of purposefully leave him in the back seat, right?
yeah, no, and I get that totally, because again, it's a Batman movie.
Right, and we've already sort of seen in other films, other origin stories, all like that relationship with them, right? And how he was basically his father figure without the title, and he was basically the first person that taught him, martial arts and the importance of that and self-defense and all that great stuff. So I think that's not really what they were going for, but I do agree a little bit more would have definitely been better. A little bit, a peek behind that curtain, would have made it, I think, that much better, because he is an integral character in the story of any Batman. Alfred's so crucial.
Yeah,
right?
of course. He's
Everyone always says, of course, without the death of his parents and witnessing it, you don't have Batman. I would equally argue, without Alfred, you don't have Batman.
100%. But I mean, I don't know if we've had an on-screen Alfred before that has such a legitimate foundation in special forces. I mean, maybe Jeremy Irons in the Snyderverse, but I don't quite remember if that was specifically mentioned that he was in the special forces. And I don't think at all that it was mentioned that Jeremy Irons taught Ben Affleck how to fight and how to defend himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of relationship, it would be a newer one to explore. And I think that would be, I mean, I don't want to say beneficial, but I think it would be really cool to see on screen.
Yeah. No, I said, Andy Serkis did such a great job, in this movie. And I think he was, in all the Batman films, I think they nailed the actor playing Alfred, casting decision in all the movies.
Yeah.
So it just, I definitely, that is honestly, that was one of my kind of takeaways, was that I wish we at least got to see him more on screen. Maybe not necessarily, all that background stuff with Bruce Wayne, but just more of him on screen, I think would have been great to see. Because he's equally important to the creation of Batman. So I think he's entitled to, more screen time. I definitely don't think it would have, made it any worse of a film if he was, even say had 5 minutes more screen time.
Right. And when you already have a 3-hour movie, what's 5 more minutes?
Oh my, exactly. Remind me before you throw your other one out there. Something you touched on earlier about how he's always running from the cops. Something that I kind of was like, I don't know if I necessarily buy that, is sort of at the end when, when they kind of are tracking down the Riddler and then inevitably find him, and Batman, when Commissioner Gordon, he tells him, to punch him in the face to kind of make a scene. So and then they're tracking him down, and then it's kind of like at the end, oh, I guess all is forgiven. So you just kind of have to buy it. I was like,
yeah, I picked up on that too. And I love the vigilante Batman that the police hate and they want to hunt down and everything. So when he did that to Gordon, I was like, oh, cool. Gordon is going to be the one cop in the city that supports Batman, and everyone else is going to be headhunting him.
Exactly.
But then they totally just forget about it. And I mentioned to some friends last night when we were talking about the movie, I said, how cool would it have been if that scene happened, right? He punched Gordon and he ran away. And then Gordon was the one guy that supported him. So then when he breaks into the Riddler's house at the end, and, in the movie, the cop comes by and he's like, oh yeah, it's a carpet tool. My uncle used it. If the cops were against him and that cop and Batman had this standoff of like, you're not going to call anyone else, right? Like, I'm Batman. You're not gonna do it. And if that cop was like, no, you're a good guy, Batman. Like, I got you covered. Like, you do what you got to do, right? And then you had that sort of mini relationship between Batman and the police officer of like, yeah, okay, there are still some people that support him, and that I think,
like, I'm helping you out, so you help me out, sort of thing.
right. But I think that would also play off of the scene earlier when Falcone's getting arrested, and he's like, we're not all dirty.
Right.
It would be this like sort of parallelism that I think would be really cool. But yeah, I do agree with that. That I would have liked it to. I would have liked the cops to hate Batman a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that seriously is kind of one of the major kind of gripes and eye-opening things in the movie that I think a lot of people maybe didn't necessarily care about or didn't care to pick up on or whatever it was. But I definitely, you and I kind of have a different eye for these types of films, like movies, especially. We really look forward to seeing. We try our best to pay attention to every detail, but yeah, that didn't really add up or make sense in the end. I mean, who knows? Maybe Gordon kind of was like, "Oh, I planned it to get him up." Who knows? You can make the assumptions, but again, doesn't make it like a terrible movie.
No, not at all. Because the way that they did handle what happened was still handled well, so you can't really knock them for it.
But I agree with. I mean, again, you always come up with so many great plot changes and ideas, and I mean that would have at least fit the storyline and the plot that was going on at that point in the movie. It would have just fitted that much better for sure.
The last point I have, there are two more inspirations that I got. Inspirations references. I don't know if they're intentional, but I think the fact that if I could think of these, somebody else can think of them, and they're very valuable in that same line of thought. The first was Watchmen, the Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons graphic novel. When Batman was like reading his journal at the beginning, it really just reminded me of Rorschach, who writes his own journal and Rorschach is just fed up with the cesspool of the city that he lives in. And while this Batman was a little bit more restrained, let's say, than Rorschach, I still grabbed that connection.
Yeah.
Of a world without super powered beings. I mean, obviously with the exception of Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen, but the same vein of thought, I think.
Sure.
And the second one was actually another Alan Moore book named V for Vendetta, which our buddy Kyle was like, he was a little shaky with this on me, but like I hesitate to think that it was a coincidence that November 5th was the day that the Riddler planned to have the explosions go off that rocked the social constructs of Gotham City.
Yeah.
Because whether you reference November 5th from history with Guy Fawkes or V for Vendetta with V, it's the same intention of blowing something up big time to shake up the societal standards of a given place.
We try to create change.
Right. So I'm not saying that like, oh yeah, V for Vendetta and the Batman exist in the same universe. I'm just saying that like, the choice to use November 5th of any possible day. Because if you go the Long Halloween route, the Long Halloween, which this movie is clearly inspired by in some capacity, the Long Halloween takes place over an entire year. It starts on October 31st of one year and ends on October 31st of the following year.
Right.
So Matt Reeves could have just as easily had this movie, The Batman, take place on October 31st. And instead of taking place over, say, 5-6 days, you could have 5-6 months or an entire year. But there was some sort of intentional decision to have it end on November 5th.
Yeah. Well,
and I think
there were like I said, I know you're not fully on board with me, but with that slight reference to the Wayne's death at the mayor's funeral, I mean, I think you can't fully deny any reference or any interpretation you make with this film, because I think a lot of them were thrown in there for kind of viewers to do exactly what we're doing, discuss them and argue, talk about them. So
I agree, and
I don't think it's fair to be like, no, that's Andrew, you're wrong. It has nothing to do with V for Vendetta or Guy Fawkes. Nothing. clearly there's definitely some truth behind these interpretations that you
I think there has to be.
like I said, with my point, I just think it's that specific word choice that really caught my eye, and just that shot of him and then Bruce Wayne and that whole theme around the 20-year anniversary. And we both could be right. It's like you and Kyle could both be right. It could be an interpretation and a reference to both those dates. You know?
We'll have to call up Matt Reeves and ask him.
That's what's again kind of great about certain movies, that can throw all those references in there and kind of let the audience try to pick and pluck them out, sort of, I guess, like a cinematic Easter egg hunt for term, seriously.
And the last thing I have here, the sort of the last thing that I loved about this movie is that it, by centering itself in year 2, specifically year 2. I mean, take inspiration from year 1, fine. But he closes his journal, like you said, and it says Gotham Journal year 2. It starts to build this foundation, and immediately it becomes very, very shaky, because like, okay, you just say he's in year 2, fine. But then you need to think of ways that, I guess, reinforce that foundation.
Yep.
And I think the ways that it does that is, you have the GCPD. Everybody knows who Batman is. Like, you go to the first crime scene, he's like, you really want this guy here? Like, he's a vigilante, and so you have the GCPD who knows who Batman is. You have the Falcone family who, one, know who Bruce Wayne is, and they know who Batman is. Like when he goes to the Iceberg Lounge and he knocks on the door, he's like, you know who I am? They're like, yeah, we do. Both times as Bruce Wayne and Batman. But you also have something like the Joker being in Arkham, which I understand a lot of people having issues with the Joker being in it, because like Batman cinema has been so oversaturated with the Joker over the last 30, 40 years. But arguably, he's the most recognizable Batman villain. So to have him,
I think that's just a fact.
Right, but to just see like this much of his face in like a holding cell window, and you immediately know it's the Joker by him just mentioning the word clown. It reinforces that foundation. I thought it was Two-Face because you see like the teeth over here, and honestly, my thought was that actor Barry Keoghan, I don't know how to say it, Barry. Right. He had been rumored for months to be the Joker.
Yeah.
So my first thought was like, oh, they're gonna pull a fast one on us and actually make him Two-Face instead. But I mean, the Joker was obviously the right choice. But it reinforces that foundation of saying, like, even though this isn't an origin story, Batman has solidified himself in Gotham City as a force of nature. And I mean, you see that just by everybody, all the puzzle pieces falling into place almost immediately as the movie starts and ends. It's really just the script writing on this was top notch.
Even that transition from him instilling fear in people to then instilling hope in them.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, I think all those other villains in the city and gangs and crime organizations and stuff, that fear is still with them when it comes to Batman. You don't be fooled and think that fear is gone now that he's come in the limelight as a beacon of hope. No. He's still, that light will still go up in the sky and still be a warning, not a signal, but a warning, as he so-called puts it. So,
but that's not going to stop someone like the Penguin from trying to fill the power vacuum left by Falcone dying, of course.
Which sparks even more potential for a sequel or whatever trilogy, whatever route they're planning to go. I for one know that you and myself will definitely go and see whatever this universe has
of course
in the coming years.
But that being said, I think this movie was so solid that if they choose to not make a sequel, I think this is just a fantastic standalone movie.
Oh, for
either
sure.
way.
Oh my God, yeah. Either whatever route they decide to go, it will be not a wrong decision, really.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But yeah, I think we like this movie, Andrew.
I think so, dude. I think so. Just a little bit. That's all I got on my notes. I mean, that was 2 pages of my notebook. Oh, and I have where is it? The ticket stub. You saw it for a second. I taped it to my notebook so I'd always have it. Oh, also the references of Bloodhaven that I picked up on. Obviously, Nightwing probably isn't a thing yet, but Bloodhaven, that's where Nightwing's from.
Oh yeah. That with that young kid in the movie when he clearly has the red.
I thought that, yeah. I was like, oh, maybe Robin, maybe.
Yeah, there was some slight references to that again, which this movie was just riddled with them. Again, pun intended for me.
Yeah.
Was riddled with reference after reference to make your own interpretation on where you think it came from or why it's just littered throughout the movie.
One of my favorite theories that I read online was I did not pick up on this in the theater. I will fully admit that, but the adrenaline vial that he spikes in his leg is the same color green as the venom that Bane uses to keep himself Bane.
Okay.
It's like, oh, maybe. And that's the theory, is that that's why Batman got so overly aggressive after taking it, because it like heightens your anger, and that's why you're just like laying into the guy. But
I missed that.
Good movie.
But yeah. So yeah, we definitely hopefully have some stuff coming people's way. I know we've teased a lot of different projects, and we still got to do our top 5. But I think we're sort of trying to patiently wait that out to make it hopefully, our best, most engaging, video yet. But I know we have other ideas that we're always kind of throwing at each other.
And Doctor Strange is coming out soon.
Doctor Strange, yeah, we still have, be on the lookout for the Raimi episode of the Spider-Man trilogy that will have our buddy Car with.
Yeah.
So hopefully, maybe that will be the next one. But definitely stay updated, and of course, Andrew's great Basement Files episodes and his play-alongs and stuff like that.
I'm working on another one. Trying
to put as much content up there, and I've had a couple ideas for myself to maybe do some quick videos and things like that. So,
yeah, of course.
But yeah, stay tuned. As always, we appreciate everyone that stays through the whole episode, listens, and
especially Aiden,
yeah, of course. Kyle's like our number 1 fan. But yeah, I mean, we definitely want to try to keep this as engaging as possible. So let us know what you think about the movie and your thoughts on the Batman and what you hope they do with the franchise, or really anything you thought about it. And Andrew and I always respond to all your comments and stuff, and feel free to share us on your social media to kind of get us out there and get it more engaging and stuff like that. But just be on the lookout for future projects, always trying to get stuff done. And also at the same time, you got to understand Aaron and I are full-time workers, so it's tough to try to find a good schedule to put these episodes out there. So
yeah, that's fine.
Appreciate everyone's patience with that, but definitely have some ideas, coming down the alleyway. So be on the lookout.
Yeah, make sure to keep your streets safe, everybody.
Stay out of Crime Alley.
Yeah. All right. Catch you later.
See ya.